Hey everybody, welcome to Wednesday Night Live. And tonight I want to talk about something that has come up in some sermons I've been preaching that I don't really focus on that much usually, but it's a theme really in all the Gospels. I've been preaching through the book of Matthew, but it's everywhere in all the Gospels, and that's just this, at least up front on the surface of things, a very simple idea, but I think it's actually pretty deep, which is that Jesus has this very, to put it mildly, a very tenuous relationship with crowds. When lots of people gather, it seems like Jesus doesn't do what we expect. We would expect him to get excited, like, look how many people are coming and believing in me. Instead, he seems to do the opposite and get sort of grumpy, more kind of caustic and resistant and aggressive even. He gets more obscure in the way he talks. He begins to kind of avoid crowds, and so it's the opposite. It's literally the opposite of how we act now and how we kind of determine what's good and what's great versus what was not, right? And so I think it's really challenging when we really let ourselves think about it, and you look at Jesus as a kind of model or the gauge of what's successful and what's not. Okay, so it's not just about ministry; it becomes sort of a filter through which we can view what we do and whether it's important or not. Okay, so it's like I said, it's everywhere in the Gospels. Matthew 11 was one I just recently preached on. That's a good one, but maybe the shortest, easiest kind of example I can give you for our purposes is John 2:23. Let's look at that really quick. Just a couple of verses, but here's what it says. Verse 23. Now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. Now, that sounds like a recipe for a successful ministry venture, right? Lots of people showed up, they believed, and they were miracles. I mean, that sounds like revival, right? But read on. Verse 24 says, but Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man or mankind. Okay. So Jesus doesn't give himself to this. He doesn't give himself to the crowd. He doesn't sort of open up to them and give access to him in terms of his own heart, his own faith, right? However you want to put that. He didn't entrust himself to them because he didn't trust them. Even though it says that they believed, but why did they believe? It says they believed because they saw the signs that he was doing. He was doing some amazing miracles that were signs of him being the Messiah, and people were coming, and they had some manner, some level of faith even that says they believed. But Jesus didn't trust it because he knows what's in their hearts in this big crowd of people. So this is honestly pretty fascinating. And it's not just here, like I said, it's all over the place. In fact, you can bet the bigger the crowd, the more more likely it is Jesus is going to rebuke them, right? That's what Matthew 11 is. So I think we can say a lot. One is that Jesus does not correlate crowds with success, meaning Jesus doesn't seem to think that the more people that show up, the more successful it is. He also, interestingly, doesn't consider miracles to be a stable source of faith for people. That's also controversial, I think, if we are to take that seriously. What Jesus doesn't want us to follow him or show up for him only because of what we think he can do for us in terms, you can fix my bum knee, so I'll follow you. Jesus doesn't trust that. What Jesus wants, he wants more than that. And you can see that in his disciples, right? The kind of faith Jesus wants is a faith that causes us to follow him and sacrifice for him, to follow him even to the cross, even if it means the opposite of our healing and restoration, if it means death and suffering, right? That's the kind of faith Jesus is after. And he makes that more and more clear as he goes on and teaches the disciples, say, look, you're going to have to carry your cross, right? Doesn't mean he won't do miracles, but the source of our faith in him needs to be deeper than that. So listen, that's really countercultural, not just for Jesus' day, but for our day right now. For Christians, it's hard for us to think that way. So another kind of aspect of this, I think maybe it's a, a broader example, which is just thinking about the ratio of Jesus's public life to his private life. Jesus died when he was about 33. He went public with his ministry when he was about 30. So he had roughly 3 years of public ministry. That means he had 30 years where nobody knew who he was. So think about this for a second. Like, this is challenging to me. I'm 45. And the thought of spending 30 years, like he is the Son of Man. Jesus is the Son of Man, the King of Kings, the source of all life. He's the one that holds everything together. He's the guy that everybody's been waiting on, God in the flesh. And he's hanging out on planet Earth for 30 years, and almost nobody knows who he is. What's he doing? Right? Why is he living in obscurity for 30 years and waiting till he's 30 to come out, like, and have that, when he gets baptized and the Father speaks out of heaven and the dove comes down on his head, his big kind of party where he comes out and says, "Hey, I'm the guy, I'm the Messiah, I'm it." Why does he wait till 30? It's amazing. And what was he doing? At the very least, Jesus was just living his life. He was doing a job. He was going to synagogue. He was going to temple. He was being a good son, a good friend, a good brother. He was learning the scriptures. He was learning a trade. He was providing for himself and providing for his family. He was doing the stuff that you do every day. These little obscure things that we just sort of call life. That's what he was doing for the mass majority of his time on this earth, was spent doing that stuff, not standing on a hillside turning loaves and fishes into food for 5,000 people. He was spending his time doing the stuff that you do. He was doing things that matter in life that take a long time to do in obscurity. There's this great book by Zac Efron called The Imperfect Pastor. It's a fantastic book. I'm going to give you a quote. He talks about this idea in the book, this 30 years in obscurity. It really unpacks it, but here's one of the things he says. He says, "Our problem arises from how the haste of doing large things famously and as fast as we can is reshaping our definition of what a great thing is. Desire greatness, dear pastor, but bend your definition of greatness to the one Jesus gives us. At minimum, we must begin to take a stand on this one important fact. Obscurity and greatness are not opposites. If it is greatness that you desire, you must from now on surrender your life to greatness of a different kind." Mark 10:43 says, "Whoever would be great among you must be your servant. Servants give their days to small, mostly overlooked tasks over long periods of time with no accolade." Let me read that again. Servants give their days to small, mostly overlooked tasks over long periods of time with no accolade. That's Jesus. Most of Jesus' life was living that way. Obscurity and greatness are not opposites. So the application, right, to pastoral ministry, if you're a pastor or you're in any kind of church leadership, that's obvious, right? You can't rate ministry success based on how many people say they liked it. You can't rate it based on who shows up and doesn't, how many people show up. You can't gauge any of that based on any of those factors, okay? But I think this strongly applies to all of us. And maybe it's obvious to you that that's true, but I think we look at the people doing more public ministry or even just more famous things, even if it's not ministry and church life, we just kind of, because our culture overvalues famousness, doing great things, as Zac Efron says, doing large things famously and as fast as possible. That's what our culture values, and it tends to be what our churches value. And so we tend to think the people who are doing the very large, famous things are great or doing a great thing versus the people like me and you that where, I'm just working a job or whatever, and I just don't feel like what I'm doing is great. And we rate those things maybe unconsciously, and it's super messed up. Okay. It is deadly even because it makes you feel like your life has no purpose unless you're doing the large thing famously as fast as possible. But what if we look at things the way Jesus did? Because if we do that, it's entirely possible that the great thing God created you to do, you're actually already doing it. Like imagine that. Imagine if this longing you have to do something great, or this guilt you feel about not doing something great. What if all of that's just hogwash? And what if the great thing that God actually made you to do, you're actually doing it right now? You just don't count it as great because your eyes are clouded by living out of the wrong culture. Zac Efron talks about how things that matter take doing small things over a long period of time. Like he calls it the mattering things. The mattering things require you to do small, unseen, obscure things over a very long period of time. Just think about the stuff in your life that actually matters. Your relationships, the things like getting good at anything, whether it doesn't have to be like a musical instrument, any skill that's worth learning takes a long time to learn, and it takes lots of little things building up to the big thing, right? In order to do something that really matters in life, you have to do thousands of things that don't seem to matter over a period of time that is far longer than you think it should be in order for it to be valuable. And you start to think, man, why am I investing so much time into this? I'm not getting anywhere. It's taking so long. There's no fruit. There's no benefit coming out of it. Why am I doing this? But those are the things that matter, right? That truly matter in life. So most people, in my experience, quit on relationships right before they get good. Most people do that. And then they complain that they don't have any good friends. That's it takes years. Most friendships take years to develop to the point where you would call them a dear, close, long-term, lifelong friend. It doesn't happen in weeks or months. It happens over a very long period of time, longer than you think it should take. That's how long it takes. And most people quit before they gets to that point. Most people quit jobs right before they get good, or they quit careers right before they get good at that career. Most people leave churches right before they get good because we underestimate how long it's going to take to develop just think about friendships. In order to develop a deep friendships, you got to start with a bunch of annoying small talk. You got to tell the same story sometimes to each other about your history because we don't remember everything. And you got to do that whole rigmarole for a long period of time, sometimes years before you kind of have a breakthrough where you feel like you got really close, you really know each other. That's not that weird for it to take that long. So here's my encouragement to you. Don't give up. Look at your life. Look at the things that you do. Everything from your job. Your job is very valuable because look at what it does. It provides for you. It makes you not be a drain on the world around you. It provides for you and your family and your friends and your church and your community. All the things that you put your hand to that seem like they don't matter. I just want to encourage you, don't give up on those things, especially the things that really matter, like relationships, your relationship with God, your understanding of your ability to understand the Bible takes time. That's another big one we've just talked about recently with some people. Just saying like reading your Bible, understanding it is one of the things that the only way to get at it is to do it a little bit at a time over a long period of time. And eventually you get better at it. That's just how it is. There's no way to get there from here without doing little things over a long period of time. So I just want to encourage you, don't give up. Keep up the small talk. Keep up the endless listening, the daily grind of your life over the things that matter, because all those little things add up to the mattering things that give your life purpose and meaning, right? Don't expect the great things to happen overnight in this big famous way, because that's not how life is. And it's not how Jesus did things. Jesus did things slowly, purposefully, in obscurity for most of his life. And he had 3 years where he was public doing visibly great things. And when the crowds showed up, he didn't trust them, because he knew that the things that matter come differently than just a crowd showing up with a big bang of miracles, right? What Jesus wanted was long-term, eternal relationship with us. And he was going to build that in the right way. And so I want to encourage you to do the same thing. Greatness is measured in inches, not miles. That's how life is. And so I hope that encourages you to kind of maybe adjust your perspective on your life and the life of other people. It sure does me. It's such a check for me personally. But I hope you guys are doing great, and we will see you next time. Bye.